What's up, RT?
Nick, welcome back.
We're back to Tough Men of Faith.
Sorry, I was over here reading a book. I was a little distracted.
Yeah, I get that, man.
I was getting ready for today.
Yeah, I thought you were checking out my new shirt.
That shirt is nice.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get a picture of it. Producer Blake can get a picture
Yeah,
and throw it
we'll
up.
get a picture.
Tough Man of Faith. You got a Tough Man of Faith shirt. You got your Tough Man of Faith water bottle.
Hydro flask.
Hydro flask.
Yeah.
My daughters make fun of your hydro flask.
Do they?
Yeah.
Good.
And anything else? Any other merch going on?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I'm working on a shirt idea, so we'll see what happens. I like this one so far, but it needs some tweaking.
I'm just glad we all have something to add to the podcast.
Right.
Blake does all the producing, all the heavy work.
Yeah.
You add the merch, and
Right, you bring all the...
I don't know what I bring yet, but I'll figure out my role
all the
eventually.
skill set and knowledge comes from you. Like,
No, then we're in
people
trouble.
People just come to me and, they just want to hear what I got to say because I'm funny. So,
I run into people occasionally that are listening to the podcast that I don't know are listening to it. Or
you
I
don't
know that
know?
one.
Is that what you said?
Well, sometimes I don't know them.
Okay.
Like they've heard from a friend of a friend, and they show up at church or an event or something, run into them, and they want to ask questions about certain things we talked about. And it's like several seasons back. I'm like, oh, yeah. Well, we've grown up since then.
Yeah. Yeah, we've grown a little. We're trying to mature. It's slow, but we're trying. So what are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, so today's a subject I think we've talked about it several times,
Okay.
but never had an episode directly on it.
Okay.
It's on pornography.
I don't want to do that episode.
Yeah, right. There's probably the reason we haven't had just like an episode on it.
I feel like you're going to step on some guys' toes here.
Like probably most guys' toes.
Yeah.
Like if we're honest, probably most guys' toes.
Probably, yeah.
At some point in their life have been either exposed to it,
Right.
seen it, struggle with it, addicted to it.
Yeah, I know some guys that are addicted to it.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a weird thing to be addicted to. Like, I think it is, but, I guess it's kind of like the dopamine thing, like, right?
Oh, yeah.
Your body's telling you, hey, your mind's telling you, hey, this is wrong, but the dopamine keeps dumping and it's telling you, hey, we want more of this. And,
I was trying to think about how to go about it, and I don't know if I have the best approach because I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about it, but I don't want it to be like where you just try to beat guys up and make them feel guilty.
Yeah.
So we know it's sin, we know it's
I don't want to bash
wrong.
anybody for it,
But I also want to the reality of there's a lot of guys struggling with this.
Yeah.
And I think what's changed now that's interesting, if we'd have talked about this episode, if we'd had a podcast 10 years ago when podcasts were first getting big.
Yeah. Nobody'd be listening.
Nobody'd be listening. But that most people viewed pornography as like, hey, you shouldn't look at that.
Yeah.
Right? It's taboo in culture.
Right.
That's kind of changed now.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of people who see it as acceptable, right?
Right.
I was reading this study.
Well, and look how it's changed too. I mean, you don't have to go to, like, for instance, a producer or something to put your material, your content out there. I mean, now you can just do an OnlyFans or something, right? And just, you're your own person, producer, boss, whatever. And it's just, I think the culture of it's changed so much, and maybe the business model.
Yeah, I was reading this article on the Gospel Coalition. It's called Pornography Acceptable Sin.
Yeah.
But it said almost 1 in 3 men agree that it's acceptable for teens to view pornography.
Really?
1 in 3 men agree that's acceptable.
30%.
And then compare that to only about 1 in 10 women think the same way.
Oh, wow.
So this is
I wouldn't even think it'd be 10% of women.
Right, but it is. But then for men, it's 1 in 3.
That's crazy.
And then the same article went on to say that roughly...
You said that, like, kids watch it?
Teens.
Kids,
it said teens.
okay.
And then roughly half of both men and women agree that pornography viewing is acceptable for adults.
Really?
Yeah. So
wow. Okay.
It's 2022. They had this, and it's the Gospel Coalition, Pornography Acceptable Sin. That's where I kind of got the information at. But then it also went on to say that 1 in 5 couples reported some degree of conflict in their relationship due to pornography. And that
30% of men say it's okay.
Okay.
But 20% of couples have an issue with it.
Yeah, and then 1 in 4 men reported actively hiding their pornography viewing from their partner.
Wow.
That's ones that admitted to it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's probably higher. So you can see the problem. Like we're saying, okay, this is acceptable, but it's causing a lot of problems over here. And so we could go into it, like why it's wrong. I mean, it's wrong, right?
Well, and I think we have. I think we've touched on it before in the past. But I mean, just it's just there's a multitude of reasons why it's wrong.
Yeah.
But
I think one thing I want to do today is look at. There's this book called "The Death of Porn" by Ray Ortlund.
Yeah.
One of the best resources I've seen on pornography.
Okay.
Is this book. So I'm just going to maybe just like read a few paragraphs out of it off and on from some different chapters, kind of just give the big idea, the big theme in the book, which I think is helpful.
Yeah.
But then I'd also encourage guys, like if this is something you struggle with, you should get a copy of it.
Yeah.
Or if you know someone that struggles with it, right? Or maybe find a buddy to go through it with you.
Right. All right. What do you got?
Well, I'm gonna read to you, Nick.
Find it.
I gotta find it. So what I did is I read this book a couple years ago when it first came out.
Okay.
Ray Ortlund, everything he writes, I read.
Okay.
If he writes a book, right? So I love listening to him.
Nice.
He's kind of like listening to, like if you had a wise grandfather who's
Okay.
just giving you advice.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Gotcha.
Like where he doesn't feel like he's trying to beat you up with everything, but he's like, hey, this isn't right.
Right.
But God loves you, and you should be going this direction. And you
Yeah.
get done reading, you're like, man, that stung a little bit. I didn't even know it at the
Right.
time. So
Nice.
yeah. But he compares, like, his big thing is for talking to Christian men. He's like, hey, you are royalty. And like he wants you to kind of grasp that. And he gets that from Genesis chapter 1, where it says that God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. He's saying, like, deep down, you should know that you belong to King Jesus as a Christian. And he's like, that's important for you to know, because that means that you were created for a purpose in life. And so when I first read this book, I was like, where's he going with this to tie it into pornography? But he says this, is that when you're royalty, you feel like you failed. So you look at pornography and you feel guilty for it. He's saying Jesus renews our royalty. When everything was on the line for us, with our dignity hopelessly damaged by our recklessness, God simply changed the subject. He changed it from us and our shame to Jesus and his grace. Not Jesus as an inspiring example we should imitate, but Jesus as the better self we've never been. Our King lived for us the royal life we should have lived, and died for us the shameful death we should have died. And so he takes it back to the gospel that, hey, when you start feeling this shame from it, and that you've done wrong, remember, you were bought with a price.
Right.
That, like, King Jesus purchased you with his blood. And so it's trying to get you to see the importance of that you're royalty, that you belong to God.
Yeah.
And then he encourages, like in his father type figures, like, son, you need to come back to your royalty. Here's why you can say that. He sides with you against your sin, not against you because of your sin. Let me read that again.
Yeah, go ahead.
It takes a couple minutes to think there. He sides with you against your sin, not against you because of your sin.
Right.
Don't try to figure that out. His big heart makes no sense to our puny brains. But here's the great thing about hitting rock bottom. All we can do then is receive his grace.
Yeah.
So when you apply that to pornography, that you've been struggling with it, you've been struggling to sin and can't get victory from it, think about that you've hit rock bottom, but God is going to show you grace upon grace there. So flipping some pages here.
Yeah.
Then he starts to talk about, as Christian men, we need to prepare for battle, like that we are created to battle. So, your royalty, you need to prepare yourself that you're going to have a battle that's going to take place.
Yep.
The next chapter, he switches from the men are royalty, and he starts the next chapter with, dear son, she matters too. She matters more than you know. That girl, that woman, the one on the porn site, she isn't just pixels on a screen. She's real. Somewhere right now, she's out there trying to get by. I'll bet you any amount of money she didn't volunteer for porn. She was degraded and abused into it. And that precious woman has hopes and feelings and longings and sorrows just like you. She is as human as you are, as worthy as you are, as royal as you are. In this letter, I have some hard things to say, but here's what I'm asking you to change how you see that woman on the porn site. I'm not asking you to make anything up. I'm only asking you to accept the way God sees her. He is on her side. He's indigent at the way she is objectified, monetized, and mistreated. Which leads me to ask you for something else. I'm also asking you to change how you treat her. I want you to stop abusing her and start defending her. You're doing one or the other. More on that in a minute, he says. But he says, hey, you're either abusing her or you're defending her.
Right.
And talking about that she is a royalty, that she's also created in God's image.
Yep.
For me, I think that's just, so many times we think about our personal battle with pornography, but then it's also, hey, that woman you're looking at.
Right.
Like, what about her?
Well, and it's like, I think we've talked about it before, that's somebody's daughter, that's somebody's kid, that's somebody's wife or girlfriend or spouse, or, how did they get into it? How many people get into it willingly? How many people are sold into it or bought into it? And what are you participating in that you can't see because of it? What are you clicking on, and what are you liking, or what are you sending money to that you can't see? I mean, you don't know. You don't know what that person's participating in and why they're doing it, and for what reasons, or, we talk about sex slavery. I mean, there's so many things that we talked about in the past, and it's just, you don't know where.
Nope.
You don't know why and where and the story behind it. You just see an image that's, pleasurable for so long, and then, I mean, really, after it's over, it leaves you feeling empty anyway.
Yeah.
You can never get enough. You can never replace that feeling. It's just, I don't know. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good. So, first chapter he says, you're royalty as God's son. Then the second chapter he's like, she's royalty as God's daughter. And then third chapter he says he is royalty, but talking about Jesus.
Yeah.
And so I wish I could just read the whole book to the guys because I had trouble like pulling out things like, hey, we should read this. But the third chapter deals with Jesus' royalty. Like he's the king that died for you. And so what does it say about what you're looking at?
Right.
And then the fourth chapter, he goes into like, we can do this, but saying that, hey, we can make a difference. Here's the great thing about right now. Yes, the porn industry is enslaving women and men by the millions all over the world today. But the great thing is this. It's game day. The divine coach has his team on the field. He's calling the big play, and he's put you into the game. You're not sitting it out on the bench wondering if he'll ever call your name. You're on the field and in his team playing offense. That's all that matters. You don't care which play the coach calls. All you care about is running his play the best you can. And when you're tired and battered and bruised, you don't mind. Good football players play hurt. They even like it that way. When a guy on the team is all dirty and sweaty and bleeding and sore, and he breaks from the huddle and trots up to the line to run yet another play, even his pain feels good. It's how he knows he's a real football player, and that's you right now. So with the team already on the field, moving the ball towards the goal line, your part is basically simple. Not easy, but simple. Just get going. Stop doing nothing and start doing something, and your something is whatever you can do. I love that. Like It's like, hey, there's a fight going on, and you need to start doing something. Right. So whatever that looks like, and we'll get into some practical things here when we get to the end, but start doing something to fight your porn addiction.
Right.
Start doing something to protect women who find themselves enslaved in this industry. Right.
Exactly.
Start doing something. He goes on to say, you're on the right side of history, son, not because of your resolve, but because of his resurrection, that we are on the right side of history with it. So, looks like you're pondering over there.
Well, I'm just thinking about what I said earlier, it's just somebody's daughter, somebody's spouse, somebody's, kid. It just, I think about, you have daughters. And, I don't have kids, but I have nieces and, my friends have daughters. And I just can't imagine people I know getting involved in it and what seemingly is kind of a one-way street. I mean, you just don't hear about people getting out of it. And I think about the females as the victims more so. And I think about them as the victims for men's viewing pleasure. I mean, at the end of the day, it's crap. It's just, I'm pondering. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It's a pretty heavy topic. Right?
It is.
So, and then the fifth chapter, he goes on and says, we can work together. It says, dear son, you won't regain your integrity all by yourself alone, but you can flourish. Any man can flourish in strong brotherhood with other men. Your life will count big time as you become part of a vast army. And then he has this quote from his dad. It says, to choose to be alone is to invite sure failure. And he applies that to battling pornography, that if you choose to battle this alone, which most men do, like they feel guilty, they look at it, they feel bad. Yeah. I'm going to stop doing this.
Right, but they're not going to tell their friend.
They're not going to tell their friend. A week later, they find themselves, they feel guilty, there's shame. Right. And I'm gonna stop, I'll never do it again. Then they find themselves doing it again. Yeah. And he's saying, hey, if you're trying to fight this alone, you're going to fail. Yep. Right. So then he talks about the importance of confession with each other. Talks about James confessing one to another. James chapter 5 talks about that you may be healed. So this kind of importance of that. So that's kind of that book. I'd encourage you guys to get it and take a read. I mean, this comes from such a different angle that it's so encouraging. Like you can beat this through the power of the resurrection. It takes it back to the gospel, which is where we get all our power from anyways. Right. And then a couple of practical things on it. Like one thing I appreciate about him is that he's like, you can't just read a book and all of a sudden you're going to be better. Yeah. You need to go get yourself a battle buddy and let them know that you're struggling with this.
And we've talked about this multiple times, but you have to have somebody, an accountability partner. You got to have somebody in your corner with you.
Yeah. And I think we've talked about it with a lot of areas. Yeah. And sometimes I think it's easier. Like if I'm struggling with, I don't know, I struggle with so many things, but like if I'm struggling with talking too much or, yeah, you see that I'm not.
Well, this is
different. This is like personal.
It's almost shameful. When you go in and start admitting to it, and whatever you're watching, and however that goes for you, it's almost shameful that you almost feel conviction. I think when you watch it, and it will lead you to not go and talk about it to your friend, to your accountability partner, to your battle buddy, to anyone. I mean, and you don't want to go share it with your wife, and I mean, you should be able to tell anything to your wife. Thinking about another point too. It betrays your wife and your children. Watching this act between other people betrays your wife and the relationship that you guys should have together.
Yeah, and whether I think when I say accountability partner, which I think you'll agree with this, is like you need another guy to help you battle this. Yeah. How you do it, if you're in it deep, how you say that to your wife and how you work through that. Maybe talk with a counselor, your pastor, or use wisdom there. And I wouldn't pretend on this to tell you the best route on that, but I will tell you for 100%, like if a dude's battling pornography and you want to get victory over it, you need to get another guy in your life who's going to battle alongside you.
Yeah, for sure.
The guys I've seen get victory over this are guys that showed up with me at a Panera and hand over a computer or other things, be like, man, I just can't even have this around me anymore.
Right.
Because it's just such a temptation.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's just one click away. You know?
It is.
And we've talked about that. It's just it's so easy to access, and
yeah,
I think that's probably the biggest problem with it is that the accessibility is just right there. I mean, it's just one click. I mean, you're there. So
yeah, I think you gotta, like, if you're gonna beat it, you need to get a couple guys in your corner who are asking you tough questions, but also guys that you just trust 100%.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I mean,
they're not going home and telling other people
exactly.
Hey, RT's battling this. And
right.
he failed this week. Like, no, these people you got to trust. Like guys that you've already built a relationship with. Maybe it's a pastor in your life or just another battle buddy, another Christian believer you're close with. But then also, like, I always recommend using something like Covenant Eyes, which we've talked about before, where they get alerted, you know, if you're looking at things on your phone or your computer to kind of help you battle that. So I think if you're going to get victory over it, you've got to confess it, like, to another buddy.
Yep.
Right? So someone close.
Yep. And
get another guy or two in your corner.
You got to confess it to God and pray about it.
And then that was the other thing, right? Is that you've got to confess to God. You got to spend some time in prayer.
Yeah.
And hopefully your buddy's praying for you.
Well, and then, I mean, the other thing too is just breaking habits.
You
know, change up your routine. You know, if you're looking at it, I don't know what you're doing. If you're alone and you're sitting around and you're looking at it, and you know, then don't be alone and sitting around. You know, what the devil's playground is idle hands. I mean,
if you're staying up late after your wife goes to bed, or if you're not married, just hanging out with your phone in your room, laying there at midnight. Yeah, maybe you don't need your phone in your room, right? So and then
just change up your routine.
Yeah,
you know, I mean,
but then the other thing about pornography. Well, we'll get into it in a minute. The last thing I would say, like my practical thing, is you've got to preach the gospel to yourself,
right?
Because otherwise, that shame is going to beat you down. Where you're like, man, I already failed at this. I might as well do it again.
Yeah.
But what the gospel says is, no, that shame and guilt's gone. Jesus took it on the cross. And when I look at what he did for me, I strive to be more like him.
Right.
And so if it's something I struggle with, I know he's taking care of that sin, but I'm going to try to be more like Jesus, right? Yeah. So that shame doesn't keep me just in this circle motion of going back into it.
Just a vicious cycle.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say is that, like, if you have sons, this is deadly, right? I mean, you got to be watching that out for them.
Young sons. I mean, now's the time to start talking. Yeah. You know, we need to.
Pretty young age, right? If you're giving your kid a phone, you better be having this conversation.
Exactly.
If they have a phone, in my mind, right? If they have a phone or a tablet or whatever.
Right. Yeah, their friends are running around with phones and tablets, and they're sharing videos and sharing messages, and it just spins. It just spirals out of control really fast.
But I think the thing with if your kid, and it's daughters too, right? We're specifically to men on this podcast, but it's really if you have children, is preaching these things to them as well in a loving way that, hey, you may fail at this, right? But not just constantly beating them down, but like, hey, here's the hope of the gospel, that even though you struggle with this, there's hope for you, and getting them victory over that at a young age.
Well, it's not exactly pornography, but at the same time, like, explaining to daughters, don't send pictures, don't send videos, you never know where it's going to end up, and once it's out there, I mean, it's out there.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
if you send something out, it's
5 minutes later, it's in China. I mean, you don't know where it's at, and explaining to daughters and to sons both that just a decision today could really wreck your future.
Yeah,
and it's one minor thing, or it's what seems like one minor thing that that isn't later on.
Yeah. So I think I'd leave with this. One, get this book if you haven't read it, The Death of Porn by Ray Ortlund. The other is, if you struggle with this, just know that there's hope.
Right.
Like, Jesus loves you. He died on the cross for you.
Yep.
Preach the gospel to yourself. Get you an accountability partner, but this don't
you got
stay
guys
in your shame.
Corner. I mean, guys praying for you, and guys that want you to, to be well, and guys that, that want to see you kick this addiction. So if you're struggling, I mean, reach out and find you a guy.
Yeah, I think this is the first episode we've made it without you cracking a joke the entire time.
Well, this one here is a
heavy topic.
Heavy topic, yeah. So,
all right. Well, thanks for joining us today for Tough Men of Faith, and get the book.
And remember, we're praying for you.
Yeah.
We want to see you well. So, in all aspects of your life, not just pornography, but we want to see you well.
That's good. All right. See you guys next week.
See you.